class. This lecture is an introduction to the epic poem Beowulf, which we will begin reading in class this week. It was written during the Anglo-Saxon period, which was between the 4th and 6th century. And a few things you should know about the Anglo-Saxon period are the class system, the deeds of service or the hero's payment, kinship, the geographic setup, and the importance of poetry in the Anglo-Saxon culture. As for the class system, what I'm referring to is the king and queen being at the very top, with the other members of royalty beneath them, such as thanes or ladies. And then beneath the royalty are mostly the other people, which would be the peasants. And as for the deeds of service, which are also the hero's payment, those would typically be treasure, such as gold, armor, or jewelry. And a hero would receive that type of payment if they perform a good deed, as we will see in the poem Beowulf. And kinship is the relationship between family members, which could be blood family members, such as your immediate relatives, like your brothers and sisters, or grandmas and grandpas, but also referring to those family members that are related to you through marriage. And in the Anglo-Saxon culture, kinship is a very important thing, as you will see in Beowulf, with various events of taking revenge to avenge a family member's death. As for the geographic setup, what I'm referring to is the typical castle and town structure, which would be with the king and the queen at the very center and the most fortified part of the town. And then within that structure, or smaller structures, would be the thanes and ladies and heroes that are of the lesser royalty. And then on the outside, surrounding the castle, out in the more exposed areas, would be the regular people, which would be the peasants. And as for the importance of poetry, such as Beowulf in Anglo-Saxon culture, is that it's passed down through oral tradition, which is the telling of stories or fables, typically through speech or through song. Now, Beowulf itself is considered an epic poem, and epic poems are more of lengthy narrative poetry, which are typically about heroes performing good deeds, such as Beowulf. And in this poem, we will see Beowulf carrying out his good deed by traveling to help King Hrothgar. Now, King Hrothgar is the king of Denmark, and his town is currently being terrorized by the creature named Grendel. And Grendel is coming in and killing his people and defeating their efforts to fight back. They cannot do anything themselves. And Beowulf hears about their trouble and considers it a challenge, and he is very determined to defeat Grendel, so he sails off to help King Hrothgar. And along with him are a small company of men. However, Beowulf is the main hero in this story. And throughout the poem, we follow Beowulf through his journey as he encounters Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the dragon, which are the three main battles in the poem. And as for the importance of Beowulf itself, it's an interesting poem because of the time frame that it was written down from oral tradition. Because of that time frame, it has differing views, which would be the Christian views versus the pagan views. And the pagan views would be the heroic code. Now, those differing views are blended together in the text, and you can see that through the characters and the themes and the events that take place. Now, I am going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, so bear with me. But in Britain, the Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian people that invaded brought with them the pagan views. Now, those pagan views are the heroic code, which go along with taking revenge for kinship purposes. So if your brother is killed in battle by an enemy, you take revenge on that enemy by killing his brother. So things like revenge and the idea of fate and the treasure and greed and glory. And those ideas were pushed out towards the end of the 6th century when there was a large-scale conversion to Christianity. So with that conversion to Christianity, the pagan views and the warrior heroic code were being pushed out of the culture, and the Christian views were being brought into the culture. So it brought in the ideas of forgiveness, not to be too greedy, and God's will. So the culture no longer had the idea of fate or glory or anything like that. And because of this awkward transition and shift in the poem Beowulf, it's believed that the original Anglo-Saxon Beowulf that was passed on through generations, through oral tradition, with the pagan views originally, is not the same Beowulf that we are reading in our class. It's not the same text because of those Christian views being present. It's thought that the original Beowulf was strictly pagan views with the heroic code and warrior culture, and it now has the elements of Christianity in it, which do make it a little bit more interesting. But not only is that just an idea or a believed thing about the text, but there are explicit examples in the text where the Christian beliefs are imposed upon the members of the more pagan culture, with the characters who behave in distinctly unchristian ways, such as Beowulf, who wants all the glory and all the treasure for himself and to be known worldwide. And then those characters have more Christian thoughts of forgiveness and not being so greedy later on in the poem. And we can see that through the transition of Beowulf from a hero to king, which we will discuss later in the class. And as for your homework tonight, I would like you to try to read up to the end of the first battle Beowulf has with Grendel. And I know it is a hard reading, so just try to get through it as much as you possibly can. Even if it gets a little tough, just keep going, and we'll cover as much of it as we can tomorrow in class.